So this presentation is about hacking growth and product marketing, and the whole idea is basically using automation to discover your number one metric within your product. This normally works a lot better with SaaS. You can also do it with e-commerce. It basically is trying to figure out how your customers behave and ultimately the tools that you can do this in order to scale very quickly. A little bit about me. So there's tons of stuff to read there, but I'll go through really fast. I'm the CEO of Clint Marketing and Architecture Quote. I also run Growth Secrets, which is an online masterclass. Feel free to check it out, growthsecrets.org. Originally from Washington, D.C., been in the startup scene for going on 13 years. I've been out here in Denmark for the last 5, co-founded 6 different companies. I already covered 13 years of marketing experience. And over the last few years, I've basically exclusively have been scaling software as a service or SaaS startups. I've won Best New Startup in Denmark, won a $4.3 million government contract. Finalists, didn't win Ecosystem Hero of the Year within Denmark. I'm used to running large teams. So the whole idea is really finding a lot of automation and balance within this. Here are some of the projects that I kind of mentioned, what I'm working on. Feel free to Google them and check them out. Some of the growth models that I've instilled, you can see on this kind of screenshot montage. The whole idea of doing product marketing is more so increasing your revenue and getting people to convert, but it's all the same stuff. Fun fact about me, I was on an American reality show about moving to Denmark. It was called House Hunters International. Feel free to look it up. And for those that are watching at home, I have a crew, my own team here, kind of hanging out and watching. And I just unplugged the HDMI cord. Cool. So my goal for today is to provide basically at any given point, there's a bunch of different tools I'm going to cover. I think there's enough in here for everybody, whether you're a content marketer or you're somebody that's done a bit of design or you're purely a product marketer. I feel like there's a lot to kind of cover. Normally I would engage with the audience here, and this is not possible given the way that, we're doing a virtual conference. But I often ask, why are you here? How many people are founders? And it's always good to kind of shape the presentation around it, but I can't right now. I always explain metaphorically a lot of different concepts when I get up to present, but I think growth hacking is one of the hardest ones. And I think it's a buzzword that a lot of people throw around, and it's kind of lost meaning over time. I always use this metaphor, which is basically, let's say your car breaks down and there's 2 mechanics on duty. The first one has read every book about fixing automobiles, but has never actually gotten under the hood of a car. And the other one has dirt underneath their fingernails, and they've fixed tons of different models of vehicles over the last 5-10 years. The second person in my eyes is the growth hacker, because they've had to figure out unique solutions to many different challenges that maybe weren't in the books. And realistically, it is a giant chasm, and it's impossible to measure the difference between theoretical and real experience. So one of the ways that I've always tried to impart towards most people that are early in marketing is how to learn marketing, and it's all about systems. So if you understand one node, one area of marketing really well, you can start to apply it to all the other systems. So let's say you write content and you're really into content. Great. That means you can start understanding some of the other elements of SEO, PR, SEM, and that opens up all kinds of doors for eventually being a very well-rounded marketer. But just like anything else, when you first get into it, it's going to be a challenge. I kept this in because, I don't know, I like these slides, but the old adage is UX is like a joke. If you have to explain it, it's probably not very good. And I find that product marketing is definitely the same type of idea. And I've gone through so many different presentations with different characters that are super into UX, and there's a lot of that funneled into this presentation, so bear with me. But this won't be specifically about bad design. It's more about how to uncover key metrics within your funnel so that you can point everybody to do that key metric that everybody else does in order to either generate more revenue or boost the conversion rates in terms of trial users versus paid users. So I used this image when I did a presentation on 2 hours on AI and content creation, and I don't know, the guy looks super stoned, but I love the idea of like tools are just ingredients. So if like you think of making a cake, some people will use flour, other people will use gluten-free flour, some people use sugar, sometimes it's stevia, sometimes it's vanilla, sometimes it's chocolate. Think about that when I mention all these tools, because there are lots and lots of tools. So this is the marketing technology landscape in 2011, which looks like a lot of tools. This is it in 2014, which is a lot more. And this was it I keep saying last year, it's already 2021, but this was in 2019, and you can see that it is exponentially growing. And that means that you're essentially having schisms in different areas. There's all kinds of different marketing tools. So it's not possible for me to mention all 7,000 plus tools. Just be aware that if I'm mentioning some tools, they're the ones that I have a preference towards, but not necessarily, I'm not employed or condoning any of these. So if you have a favorite, then by all means. So first I want to explain marketing funnels really quickly, because I think it's super relevant and it's always good to get a quick refresher. So this is one way to look at a marketing funnel. You attract, convert, close, delight. And there's lots of other ways to kind of build this out. My favorite stage in here is the delight stage. I'm going to go into some details on how to go about hitting that delight stage. But an example of companies that suck at the delight stage is probably cell phone companies or telecom companies. And so personally, I think I've had the same contract for 5 years. Prior to moving here, it was the same one for 10 years. Right around Christmas time every year, you see all of these amazing advertisements that give you a brand new iPhone 20, and it's half the price of the monthly cost. And the reality is they don't really care whether or not they're helping you, the core customer that's been paying them for 10 years. They're trying to get more new customers. And I think you miss out on so much by not delighting the existing customers. This reduces churn, which is when people basically decide they don't want to pay for your service anymore and leave. This also reduces the idea of people downgrading, and there's a lot that goes into it. Here's another view of the exact same funnel. It's just turned upwards, and what we all kind of look at and understand the funnel: awareness, interest, decision, action. This is a content funnel, so different content elements that go into a funnel. So you have top of funnel, middle of funnel, and then the bottom of the funnel. Then you have another funnel, which just kind of rearranges a few things and goes into more detail about, I guess, kind of the middle elements of the funnel. Here's another one. This is HubSpot's funnel, and I don't know, it's cute. I guess they only had kind of 3 main areas, but then they break it down by like the sales cycle. This is Dave McClure, our Pirate Metrics. It's basically just adding more stuff to the very bottom of the funnel, so there's nothing too crazy there. This is another look at that, and then some of the different elements within Pirate Metrics. I'm not for or against Pirate Metrics. It's just a new framework. Every once in a while, somebody reinvents the funnel. It's all the same stuff. So when anybody talks about the funnel, we're basically talking about creating interest, getting somebody into a consideration zone, and then eventually closing them. That's it. And to reinvent again, I don't know, maybe I'll make my own funnel and make millions of dollars as the new funnel guy. I don't know. So segmentation is one area that I really want to go into. And I realize that there's some high-level stuff here, but bear with me. I'll move through it quickly, and there's some dessert at the end, I promise. So segmentation is super important. The idea that not everybody who converts on my website, whether I have a product or a service, not all of those people are the same, and they shouldn't be treated the same, because there's indicators that can tell you whether or not somebody is a much more likely candidate for converting as a paid customer versus somebody that's just there to peruse. So I usually set up something in the way of targeting ideal customer profiles. ICP doesn't stand for like insane clown posse, which is beyond me why people are into that. But yeah, then I could also measure out what type of conversion. So if somebody converts organically and comes to my website, it might have a different set of urgency than if somebody sees an ad that says 30% off, buy now. There's probably a higher likelihood that somebody is going to convert at the end of coming directly to my website, because they're probably in this impulse buy zone. And it could also be on content. So somebody that maybe converts on an article that I wrote about how to upload TikTok videos from your PC might not necessarily be interested in enterprise marketing services for their small, medium, or large business. They might just be a kid. So this is where lead scoring kind of starts to play into the way that people's previous interactions come into your funnel, but also being able to segment these people out, the source, the medium, and figure out, is there a commonality between the people that purchase my product the most often? And the answer is yes. Like, you can totally figure that out. And there's tools that basically have all this stuff kind of boxed in and added for you. So HubSpot, Salesforce with Pardot. Google Tag Manager allows you to kind of tag up all these events. Then there's Segment, which is really nice, and Branch is kind of like another version of Segment. So any one of these tools could be kind of daisy chained in. This is a really visual sense of kind of what that looks like. So we're collecting data on the habits and the way that people engage with either my messaging or my website or whatever the case is. Then I want to segment. So is somebody in this like really hot area where most of the people that look and feel like them and act like them end up buying? Then I probably want to do something more directly for those people. And then I want to build out a workflow so that I'm constantly hitting these people to say, hey, remember me? You want to buy from me, right? You want to buy my stuff, right? This is how marketing works. And it's shocking how many people don't understand just the core basics of this. And it's nobody's fault. I just don't know if it's always kind of ingrained to everybody that this is kind of the funnel that we have to play with. And if we can use as much data as possible in order to make a better decision, then why wouldn't you? So the whole idea of lead scoring has kind of evolved over time. It used to be a super manual process where you would say, I'm going to give 10 points to whoever came in on this form versus that form. Usually when people convert on a book a demo versus sign up now, book a demos tend to be a higher converting type of lead. So I know that person's actually eager. They want a salesperson to come in and sell them hard. Maybe not so hard, but I don't know. They want to be sold. I think there's also an understanding that if you can enrich the data behind a sign up, then you might be able to find, is this somebody that actually can afford my product or service? Is this somebody that would actually be a perfect use case for my product or service? So if I can enrich the data, maybe using Clearbit or one of the other tools in the lower left, I can tell that, hey, this is a 10,000 person company. Stanley over in sales needs to call them up right away because this could be our biggest contract ever, versus maybe it's a mom and pop shop that doesn't really have the ability to purchase an enterprise level of my product, and therefore I don't really need to go nuts on trying to call them. That is the difference between lead scoring and just kind of finger in the air, I guess. I don't know. We'll see. You can do this automatically, and a lot of the tools there allow you to do that. Infer has been my favorite for a long time, but it's neither here nor there. Pick your favorite. The next stage is CRM integration. CRMs are basically client retention management software. I don't understand why people have these. We have these over at my marketing agency, Clint. The whole idea is basically I want to make sure that I'm tracking people through the process of buying. So there's I hate using like analogies, but it's kind of like the one that everybody knows. There's an inevitable process that takes place when, let's say, you meet somebody new and you go on a first date, and then whatever the end goal is, maybe it's getting in a relationship, maybe it's not something crazy. But the idea is that there are steps that have to happen there before that goes down. It's the same with converting and becoming a paid user of a software as a service product. First, I need to get in and try out the product. Then I need to convert as a user. Then I need to go through onboarding, and then I need to love your product. If we don't outline those steps, and if we don't make sure that we're qualifying people leading up to those, we're missing and we're leaving so much money on the table. So these are different CRMs. Pipedrive used to be my favorite. I'm kind of over it. I would say Close is on their way up. ActiveCampaign, not bad. Autopilot isn't really a CRM. I don't know. I put them in there for fun. But yeah, pick your poison. I mean, there's no like leaps and bounds better version. So this breakdown is the most simplistic way that I've been able to explain the sales cycle that meets the marketing funnel, and it's not super simplistic. My biggest challenge as somebody that's run marketing departments is that I cannot get somebody on the other side of the aisle to work with me. And maybe I have a bad attitude, I don't know. But the idea is I think sales and marketing need to have this really nice relationship where marketing feeds over leads and sales feeds back information. That information is they really fell for this feature, or the messaging that was on that landing page was the reason that they converted, or these are the leads that came in, converted, and are now paying customers. If I know that, then it just becomes a predictable revenue game. So for every dollar that comes in here in our most successful campaign, I know I'll get $2 out over here. If you can do that well with sales, then holy smokes, you have something. So the whole purpose of this slide is to integrate with a dashboard. Dashboards are super important to basically measure out how everything works. So from start to finish, I have Google Tag Manager that allows me to see every action that happens on the website even before they get there. So I know the source and the medium. So maybe it was Facebook and maybe it was this particular ad campaign. I can see everything within analytics. I can send all the information via segment over to my database and have it follow the lead into the CRM. They go and convert on the form. I get more data. I add all the data, so every previous click, every previous behavior, everything that they've done prior to landing on my website. I get everything they put into the form, and then I put it into my database. I use a tool to enrich it, and then ultimately I have perfect data inside of my CRM. So as a marketer, the salespeople have also made my job easier because it's automated for them. They don't have to think. And the reality is I'm then able to have something in the way of predictable revenue. If you're still with me, great. I don't know, like I'm really into this stuff. If you can't tell, then I don't know. It's my jam. So the most important thing that I often try to work into, whether it's a large company or even a startup, is the user journey mapping, or mapping out of these are all the steps that it takes in order for a user to be a happy user that is put forward their credit card and is basically already through your sales cycle. We have to figure out what are the least amount of steps to get there. So often it's like a work your way backwards. The ideal situation is somebody gets into a paying situation and they're happy to pay me every single month. And working my way back from that, where did they come in? What did they do? What's the least amount of steps to get there? And how do I make sure that I do this for other people? There's tons of other tools. My favorite is probably draw.io right now. It allows you to kind of do this mapping stuff very similar to Lucidchart. It's the same way that you would trace like a serial killer kind of thing. And I think it's super interesting. So this would be me mapping out the 20 or so steps with a previous startup that I was employed by. And as you can tell, 20 steps is way too much in order to get somebody to give you money. That's insane. And that's kind of part of the learning curve, is how do we take these steps out? How do we automate some of this? How do we remove manual action, which is a big theme of what growth hacking is all about. I don't know, I put in a clip art version because it took me forever to find that and I didn't want to throw that slide out. So there you go. There's another example. So what happens after they've converted and they're inside of the platform? There's two different tools that I tend to focus in on pretty heavily. The third one in there is Kissmetrics, but Amplitude, Kissmetrics, and Mixpanel. These are tools that are basically like the Google Analytics of your platform. So I can see every single action that every user takes as soon as they log into the platform. That can be swipes if it's a mobile app, that can be clicks, that can be invites, that can be navigation. And the whole reason behind doing that is now I have basically an entire playing field of data that then all I have to do is organize and figure out what was the pathway that was the most successful amongst all this? What do all these other users that come in have in common? And what do my paid users, my best users have in common? And once I know that, then it's a matter of making sure that everybody does the same thing that my best users do. So if you come in and you immediately do this one action and the resounding or resulting action beyond that is like, oh, dude, here's my credit card, then it's like, holy smokes, I got to get everybody to do that. So there's different tools that allow you to basically automate the messaging, and this can be in-app messaging, this can be emails, this can be anything. But Autopilot is kind of my new favorite. I'm not like sponsored by them. I just really think they have a nice little tool. Drip, Drift, User.com, Customer.io, and Intercom used to be affordable, but shame on them. They drove up their price by like 2.5, 3 times what it used to cost, making it unaffordable for startups, which I think is ridiculous. Hope it bites them in the long run. So in terms of how I go about looking at these flows, once you align with either a back-end developer or maybe you have a little bit of time to go through some of the, some of the YouTube videos on how to go about doing this, you can really tag up everything super neatly. So it's just a matter of kind of collecting data and figuring out what patterns emerge. And the whole idea is every paying user usually has 1 to 2 actions in common. So if I can mimic that or make that happen with all users that sign up, I win the game. And that's it. So it's often about 80% of users do one thing, 20% do the other. So one example is Planday. Planday was an hourly shift worker software. It was one of the first jobs I got here in Denmark. And I had to figure out what was like the big pattern internally that every paid user did before they ended up converting into, every trial user converted into a paid user. And that was inviting another employee. So let's think about that. Why on earth would it be important for somebody to invite somebody else to a platform? And the answer should be relatively obvious, and it's much harder for a company to cancel any type of contract with a tool or some type of service that other people are using. It becomes kind of the tentacles thing that kind of gets into an organization that it's very difficult to cut out. So the idea is that if you get a bunch of other people using the same platform or tool, it's game over. Like they can't quit you now. Like you're in. It's the first one's free kind of thing. So it definitely works. The next one I found kind of confusing and also like it made sense over time. So I worked for a construction project management company called Let's Build, and really not the sexiest type of software out there, but we found very quickly that there was one thing that everybody did who became a paying user, and that was uploading a project into the platform. So a lot of these guys were using either Trello or Microsoft Projects, I think was the name of the tool, and a few others. And so if we made it easy for them to pull in all their data and they didn't have to manually enter stuff, we removed the amount of steps it would take. It was significantly more likely that they would become a paying client, which is, of course, what we all want to do. So all of my feature messaging changed from, hey, here's this cool thing that we do. Here's another feature to upload your project, upload your project, upload your project. The goal was to get everybody to do what the most successful people did. And your software as a service or even e-commerce company should be no different. The last example that I'll give is Actimo. Actimo recently got acquired to Cahoots, doesn't matter. One of the most important things that I figured out with this tool was basically its internal communication. So it basically required a bit of that first tool that I showed, which was invite all the users. But what we found was giving people a chance to really see how easy the tool was when creating a message was the differentiator. So if you went in and messages automatically essentially populated and you realize, wow, this took me 30 seconds, and in other platforms or other ways of internal communication and building these training courses, it would take me forever. That was a slightly different thought because I really thought it would be like invite everybody. And no, it was showing how great the tool is. And sometimes that is like that key differentiator or big metric that you have to chase after. It just depends. And everything's a little different. So yeah. Other examples, I mean, it really spreads the gamut. That was just 3 out of what are hundreds of thousands, if not millions of startups out there that are in the software space. Sometimes it's logging back in. Like this could definitely be a lead scoring thing on the other side of the aisle, which is if I know a user hasn't logged back in the last 2-3 months, they're probably not happy with my service and they're probably on the verge of canceling if they haven't already started to think about it and do it already. And churn is one of the biggest things that can really put things in a bad situation for startups because that's one of the things that investors look at on pitch decks, like how many people churn. If you don't have a way of measuring how long it's been that people have been in your platform and not doing anything, you can use mixed panel amplitude, KISS metrics. Referrals and invites I kind of already covered. Scheduling a demo, I think I already kind of talked about a little bit. Uploading or putting something into the platform and there's some automatic results. Creating the first campaign might be more important for like sales type tools. Adding profile information, making it yours, some type of personal touch, changing the profile image. Completing the onboarding and watching an explainer video. I think all of these are kind of little indicators, but it really depends on the tool and the platform. I'm going to really quickly run down a few different hacks with onboarding and a few other thoughts so that, I make the most of the time and I hope it's relevant. But onboarding is one of my favorite things, and I think it's so interesting because, my background is psychology. I graduated with a 4-year degree in psychology, which meant I could work with old people with dementia or very young children. Obviously, not doing that now. but it was an interesting experience, I guess, and it allowed me to actually get a lot better at marketing. So one of the most important things that I think we miss within onboarding is the personalization, making sure that it's super intuitive and everybody understands the natural next step is X, Y, and Z. Keeping it short and not necessarily boring the hell out of people, because I think we all inherently find our product or service to be super interesting, but it's definitely not. Light touch versus heavy touch, depending on how complicated the project is, or giving people a chance to kind of exit out of that. Lots of different ways to look at it. App queues for the longest time has been my favorite one. If you've ever done any type of onboarding on an app, like first you swipe right. It's like, I don't know who needs a tutorial in like Tinder, but there's still some type of onboarding with that. And with more complicated apps, you'll definitely see it. Some of the best onboarding that I've ever seen has these little pop-up windows that actually are automatically playing the video. It doesn't play the audio, so it doesn't annoy you, but you can genuinely record these just the way I'm recording this right now in a matter of seconds, and it will make all the difference in terms of people are like, oh wow, there's a person behind this. Screen capture tools are a dime a dozen. Loom is a free one. In terms of doing some really interesting stuff with onboarding, I scraped this person who's popping up. You see, that's what good onboarding looks like. I love that stuff. And the idea behind it is quite simple. It's supposed to pull people through the entire experience, and I hope that's relevant. Some of the other onboarding things that I really like, I always make sure that it's possible for people to invite other users. For anybody that's ever signed up for a software as a service solution, it's almost entirely this. Or at least this after they've gotten the most important information, because this gets the hooks in. This is what we talked about before with inviting other users. This is also where you can sell to other users, you can build out referral networks, there's all kinds of interesting stuff. And the last couple of things that I'll touch on is reporting, just because I think it is somewhat interesting and I think you miss so much by not having it. So within Amplitude, Kissmetrics, and Mixpanel, you already have something in the way of dashboards that are super clear and interesting, but having dashboards that show the full spectrum is something else. Showing the amount of people on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly basis that go into the platform, where they come from, most successful campaigns, and the most successful actions. You own the entire system. And if you can do that, not only are you a marketer that will forever have a job, but you'll also have the most successful companies that you work at, because this is the difference between companies that can really scale and those that don't. The last few things that I'll touch on are retention related, just because I dig it and I think I need to do more of it myself. So these are little hacks. Do you guys remember when I was talking about the whole telecom thing with like phone carriers not really caring about you? This is the difference between keeping a company alive and also making sure that you're scaling. So when you try to delight customers, especially if you only have like 4 or 5 customers, it's so important to remind them that they got into business with you for the right reasons. So I've been a part of numerous campaigns using one of the 3 services. Postable was the one that I used. They're handwritten thank you notes. So somewhere somebody's actually writing a thank you note. You wouldn't be able to read mine if I actually wrote it. So like somebody has like nice penmanship. It's $5 to basically send these out. Somebody sends it out for you, they write it, and they sign it with your name. Like, congrats, like you did a great job. You can also order cookies for people, water bottles with your logo, champagne, whatever. If this is carrying 30, 40, 50% plus of your business, you need to make sure that it's very clear that you are thrilled that somebody decided to give you their business. And it's surprising how little people do that. If you want help with that, that's what a marketing agency can do for you. We're called Clint, clintmarketing.com. Come check us out. There's a few other plays within retention. I think some of the gamification that you can do once you've already tagged up all these different elements within your platform are super interesting. You often see this with fitness apps, but I do think that there's some interesting stuff if you have a software as a service where you're really measuring out how often people are actually in your platform and whether or not they're getting value. Some of the other stuff in terms of people leaving the platform and reducing churn is so important. If you can stop somebody from leaving, it's everything. So one of my favorite ones is on the far right. It's this bear, and I can't even remember the name of the platform anymore. But it was basically a platform-based, like desktop-based solution. And so when you go to uninstall it, the bear starts to cry, and it says, "I thought we were friends," and then under that, it's basically removing bear fur from hard drive, drying bear tears, bear's girlfriend stops calling, buff and claw marks off motherboard. So like they had some way of measuring this where they found that like 10% of people actually reinstalled it because a cartoon bear cried, which is absolutely absurd, and that's a hell of a growth hack if you ask me. And I think that those things work exponentially really well. You just have to put time into it and measure it. Last few things within retention I think are pretty straightforward. I think the gamification of trying to get people to convert, but also giving dual-sided rewards, some type of form abandonment or cart abandonment is really where it's at. And you can see that with a lot of e-commerce companies. If anybody's watching this in e-commerce, then you probably know what's up. But the reality is finding a million different ways to bring people back to the edge, because once they leave your website, that's pretty much it. So if you have any way to continue to reinvigorate people that were this close to buying, then you might end up getting 2 or 3 extra conversions every single day. Who knows? I don't know. I always over-prepare for these things, so I have a unreasonably long slide deck, but I think I'll just close for now because I know that I had to keep it between 30 and 40 minutes. But I connect with everybody on LinkedIn. So long as you are not a agency that's competing with me, I'm happy to send you my slides and yeah, I mean, all's fair in love and war, but come on. So yeah, connect with me on LinkedIn. Check out Clint Marketing, KLINT marketing.com. And I hope this was helpful, and yeah, thanks a lot.